Are you running low on time and money, but you still want to have some cute spring and Easter decor? Well, stay tuned. Hi, my name is Leslie, and welcome to Happy Tuesday, where we do crafts and DIY and home decor and more. Today I have for you 5 super cute and chic projects that you can make using supplies you most likely already have at the house or can get on a very slim budget. Now, don't forget to stick around until the very end and I'll have a hint on one of next week's projects. So, let's get crafting! Let's take a quick sneak peek into all 5 of today's projects. I am so excited about these. And not only are they budget friendly, but they are time friendly and easy. And this is project number 1. So I'm just going to take this little board that I bought at the Dollar Tree, but you can use any kind of scrap wood you have in your home and a piece of poster board. And I just cut the strip of poster board to be the exact same size as that piece of wood as far as the width goes. Once you've got that done, try to figure out what kind of height you want on your bunny's head and then snip down appropriately. I decided this is going to be just a classic black and white piece, so I am going to go ahead and paint my piece of wood white. This is Snow White, I believe, by Waverly. And once the whole board is painted on all the sides, then I'm going to go ahead and grab my hot glue gun, and we are going to glue this tab onto each side. That way it has full stability and gives us the rise that we are looking for. Now I'm also going to cut 2 more pieces off of my poster board equal to the width of that board as well. That way the ears are in line with the width of the, we'll call it head for now. Once I've gotten that done, I'm going to figure out how big I want my ears and give that a little crease. That way I can kind of determine size and dimension and width and all the things related to the ears. Then I was trying to figure out, okay, exactly how am I going to connect these 2 pieces of poster board, and decided to go ahead and make a little tab down at the bottom. Now, because it's all white, it will just blend in seamlessly and you won't even notice the tabs. So I got both and then measured the second one off the first one so that both ears were going to be the same size. And then I kind of played with my poster board a little bit to make sure that I was going to get the roundness of the ears that I wanted. Now, since this is going to be a black and white bunny, I decided to add just a little bit of decor. So I'm going to grab a little heart, and this will kind of be, we'll call it the bunny tail. So this could be a, bottoms up bunny, or it could be the heart of the bunny, whichever you choose to see it as. And I painted that black. Then I grabbed one of my pens, and it's got that, rubber thing at the bottom that you can use for signing electronic things, or, touchscreen, whatever. And it was the perfect width for what I wanted for a polka dot. So I went ahead and put some black paint on there, and I am just dabbing polka dots all over both sides of each ear, as well as I'm going to put polka dots all along that head or bunny bottom or whatever it is that you want it to be. It did have a hole in the center, so I kind of had to go back with and dab it a couple of different times, make sure that I got that little tiny center hole covered. But I think this just turned out to be such a classic look. So I'm going to put my hot glue onto the little tab, and you can see it just kind of seamlessly blends in with the other piece of poster board that is the head / bottom. Again, whichever you want. And then you can kind of form your little ears, rounding them out, kind of squunching them down to whatever form you want them. I did make sure to place them in a spot so that they weren't on the polka dots, and then I added a dab of hot glue onto my little heart and added that on there. And then I found this, I think it's houndstooth print ribbon that I had in my craft supplies. I think I bought this one from Big Lots when Big Lots was going out of business, and got it super duper cheap. And I just love the little black and white of this. So I made it just a shoestring bow and dovetailed the ends, glued that on up there by the ear, and that's all there is to this project. It is complete. Super cheap, super simple, and super cute. So here we are. I think all total, even if you had to buy the piece of wood and a whole sheet of poster board, you know, most of y'all have glue and you have ribbons, you could probably make this for less than $2.50 out the door. I just wanted to pop in here real quick and tell you how much I appreciate you, whether this is your first time here or you're a regular subscriber, and y'all know who you are. It warms my heart that you come back week after week to spend time with me. Now, if this is your first time here, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button and clicking the bell so that you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Give today's video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and comment below. Now, let's get back to crafting. And that'll bring us to project number 2. I love this one. Of course, you guys know I love wire art of any kind of form or fashion. So this is my yard debris from my yard, and I trimmed it off with my miter saw and miter box to the size that I wanted. And then I grabbed some scrap paper and some a book that I tear pages out of, and grabbed a pen and drew on my little bunny forms. Now I drew them 3 times, trying to make sure that I get to pick the best one and the best ears, and so you could probably just, you know, draw it on once and not have to draw it, because you can use the other one as pattern. Once I've got my pattern situated, I did grab that second piece, and we're just going to cut it out from this pattern to the size we want. And I did cut my bunny ears separate from my body because we're going to cover those with paper wrapped wire. Once I've got all 3 of my bunnies cut out and the ears cut out, I decided to just cut one ear, and we're going to cut it out multiple times so that we have the ears looking all the same. And of course, having multiple sheets of paper that you cut out all at the same time saves the number of times that you have to be cutting too. What is that saying? Work smarter, not harder. Once I've gotten all 3 of my bunnies cut out, and I did decide to make one just a little bit smaller than the other, I'm going to grab my paper wrapped wire, and I am going to hot glue that around the edge of the ears and the bunny. This paper wrapped wire I have had for quite some time. I bought it on Amazon, and I will have that linked below. So if you don't have any, this is great stuff that I use all the time in making little wire pieces for my decor. You guys have all said that you love the wire art, so I try to make sure that we have several pieces of wire art for every season. I haven't seen any creators create any wire art. Have you guys? If you have, let me know who in the comments down below. So once we got each ear wrapped in that paper wrapped wire, then we trim that off, and then we are going to grab our paper wrapped wire and our hot glue, and we are going to glue it around the body. Now I did have a little bit of excess glue that I was trying to pick out around, but it really doesn't matter. You don't really see it too much when the piece is up and about. Most of that hot glue dries pretty clear, so unless you get a whole bunch of it stuck there at the edge. And I try not to do too much at one time, because it does dry pretty quickly, and on paper it dries even quicker. So, you know, I'm trying to just do it little sections at a time until I get
all the way back around, and we'll snip that off. Once I've gotten the whole bunny done, then I'm going to go ahead and add a dab of hot glue onto the bottom of each ear and add that on, and then you can either use your bunnies just like this or you can embellish them. Now I got these little pieces. I want to say they came from Dollar Tree. Pretty sure they came from Dollar Tree actually. And I thought I might want to use those as the eggs next to my bunny, but then decided, no, I'm just going to do some paper that kind of matches with my decor, and we're going to cut out two bigger eggs and one smaller egg, kind of like the bunnies, and then we will also wrap these in that paper wire as well, and that way it kind of matches my decor. So I just use that egg as the pattern. I did keep the mushroom out though. We're going to add that as a little embellishment on there. And I think I was saying you could embellish your bunnies as well if you want to put a little twine bow, which I'm going to do right here. Just make a little shoestring bow and trim that off. And I'm going to use two of those as little bow ties, and then one as a little ribbon in her hair. And that way we have our different bunnies there. And if you wanted, which I did not, but if you wanted, you could also add a little pom-pom tail, or some other, maybe a twine tail or something onto them, and use this as the back side instead of doing bows. And you wouldn't have to use paper out of a book either. You could just use whatever scrap cardstock you have available. I mean, I keep a box with all of my scrap cardstock, and then when I want to make little pieces like this, I just go in there and shop from my scraps. So it makes things super fun and easy. Now we're going to add a little dab of hot glue onto the bottom of the bunny. And I ended up having to add more than a single dab just because I wanted my bunnies to stand upright on their own. I didn't want to have to, put a little block or anything behind them. I just wanted them to sit on that log all by themselves. Now you could also, instead of doing it this way, you could just, stick them onto a block and glue the block onto the little log. And it doesn't even have to be a log if you don't, like the rustic decor, then you could just grab a frame and put your bunnies inside of a frame, sitting on maybe a little moss or something. Whatever your imagination can bring up for you that matches with your decor and your kind of vibe of style. But I love the rustic, bring the outside inside kind of thing. And then I decided for the mushroom that I would give it a little sandstone coloring on there, just to kind of go with that natural nature vibe. And that's all there is to this project. Super cheap, super quick, and super simple. All the supers. And that'll bring us to project number 3. Talk about simple and cheap. This is the one. So I have these little wooden eggs. We're going to use one of those, and I pulled out a wooden heart, and I'm going to cut that in half, and we're going to use those for the little sheep's ears and the egg for the sheep's face. And then I just grabbed a scrap piece of wood there. I think that's part of an old fence post, and 4 little beads that we're going to use for his little feet, and just some yarn that I had available. Again, you can make this with whatever scrap of yarn you have. We're just going to wrap it around. And I wanted to make sure the beads weren't too big, but also held my little lamb up. And so I'm going to set all that aside, and then we are going to cut down our block. I felt like it was just a little bit too big for the size that I wanted for my little sheep here. And then I'm going to go ahead and unravel some of that yarn, and so we can start gluing this on. I just set 1 dab of glue along the outside edge and then wrapped it around and around and around until I got to the end. And I didn't glue it again until I got to the end. You want to make sure that you've got good coverage, and I end up wrapping this twice around to cover up all the spots. And when I get to the end, then we're going to glue the whole end in place, and I'm just going to do that in a back and forth kind of motion, making sure that I've got complete coverage of my wood block. And then, once I've got that, then I will run that yarn all the way back down the other side again, giving it a nice fluffy fullness. Now, if you don't have yarn available and you want to do it with what you do have, you could do cotton balls on your scrap piece of wood. You could do maybe some of that that white cotton chamois, that you get from the Dollar Tree, if you have some of that, or some pillow fluff. I mean, just use whatever you've got. Use your imagination to kind of fill in the blanks and keep you from spending any money. There's lots of things that can look like sheep's wool. And then once we get the other end done, we're going to go back in and just make sure we've got complete coverage. And then I'm going to wrap it one more time, making sure that I've got the fullness I want. And then I will glue that off. I grab my 4 beads and a little skewer, and that's how I like to paint the beads. That way, especially these smaller ones, I'm not getting that all over my fingers. And then I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of decor onto my ears and add my eyeballs and my little face pieces. And I'm just using a white chalk marker from Dollar Tree. Once I've got that done, I am going to make a little twine bow, and I wrap this around 3 times for each side, just to give it all the cuteness I thought this little sheep deserved. And once I've gotten it wrapped 3 times, I'll go ahead and snip that off, and then I'm going to snip off an extra piece to kind of tie that all together, making sure that our little bow is all good and secure. And once it's secure, then it will be ready to glue onto our little sheep body. And I just, like I said, I just knotted that on there twice, making sure that it all stayed together, and then trimmed off my edges. Cool part about this is if you don't want to use regular twine, you could use a baker's twine, or you could use whatever ribbon you have available that matches, again, with your decor. Then we are going to glue it all on. So I wanted to kind of dry place it first, figuring out where I wanted my ears, and then a dab of hot glue, and it sticks really well onto that yarn. I'm being kind of careful because my white chalk paint is still a little wet, and I didn't want to smear it with my fingers. But I was getting too impatient about putting this little guy together, and I just think he turned out so cute, and I was just so excited. And then I'm going to add my dab of hot glue onto the little bow there, and add him a little bow tie. And then I have one of these little pom-poms from my Christmas stuff that's left over, and I want to make sure that it was round, so I kind of fluffed it up between my hands, added a dab of hot glue, and added that onto the end of him. And then I'm going to go ahead and I grabbed a little heart and painted that black as well. Kind of goes with my other little heart, so my pieces, have some cohesiveness in my decor. And then I glued my little feet together because together they're still wider than the base of that wood, and so I wanted them to be able to stay together and not be too difficult in gluing onto the bottom of this. And then I grabbed a dab of hot glue and decided where I wanted them on the sheep, made sure that they stood up, and that's all there is to this project. Super cute and super simple, and you can make it any kind of color or vibe that you want that matches with your decor. That brings us to our next project number 4. And this one couldn't be any simpler. So I have a clay pot left over from a pots video I did last year, which I'll have that linked below if you haven't seen it. Super cute. And so I'm just going to go ahead and use my heat gun there and get the stickers off, and then my orange chalk paint is just a little bit too thick, so I add a little bit of water to it, and I'm just going to paint the bottom and the top in that orange chalk paint. I'm going to paint it, I think I did 2 coats just to get the coverage that I wanted. Honestly, because the clay pot is kind of already orange, you probably could have left it that way, but I wanted that little sticker spot kind of covered up, and I liked this orange a little bit better. Then I had this green raffia that I didn't know what to do with in my craft supplies, and I thought, well, that will make the perfect little carrot top. And so I just took one piece and wrapped it around and around, securing all those pieces together, and then trimmed off the top so that I had all the little kind of grassy looking stem things. And once I've gotten that done, then we are just going to glue that right onto the top of our clay pot, which is normally the bottom. So I gave it a good amount of glue and then secured it down there, held it real good till it was nice and secure. And honestly, you could stop right here. But did I? No, because I wanted to add some more twine to it. So I made another shoestring bow. I made this one with double the twine, and I love the way the little curly cues are at the end. You could do a piece of ribbon up there. And then I decided I needed to put something inside. You could totally just leave it like that, but I grabbed some scrap paper and wadded it up, and then I grabbed some Spanish moss and just put a handful of that inside the top. This could be a great candy bowl, so I'm just kind of putting a little filler in there just to show you something else that you could do with it. But you could use it for candy, you could leave it empty, you could totally decorate the inside however you wanted. You could even decorate the outside. I did think about making some, little brown carrot lines on there, but I just like the clean look of this simple carrot. Super simple. Anyone could do that one. And that brings us to project number 5. Project number 5 has got to be my favorite for the video, honestly. And again, super simple. So I had that little easy peasy lemon squeezy little board there from Hobby Lobby. Bought it on clearance for 49 cents when they had a bunch of this stuff on 90% off. And I am just trying to find the center. So rather than wing it, I did measure it, and then I'm going to grab my miter box and saw, and I am going to cut a hole in the center of this board because I want my ring, which I bought at the Dollar Tree. It comes in those pack of 3, the different sizes, and I'm using, I want to say the medium size, but I want the ring to sit inside that little groove there. So I used the miter saw, and I used a hammer and a screwdriver, and I made that little split wide enough for the ring to sit inside, and that way it'll be nice and secure in there. Now, since this is like an MDF kind of wood, I wanted to have more of a wood look, so I took the antique wax and I'm kind of brushing it on there a little bit, and then I am going to just grab my paintbrush with a little bit of white and kind of dry brush that on there a little bit, and then I'm going to come back in with a little bit more of that antique wax and just kind of go back and forth a little bit until I get the look that I'm looking for. I did add a little water to that white, and then, kind of I'm just playing with it, trying to get kind of a wood grain-ish type look to it without being so stark brown. It's kind of difficult when I went and sanded off all the things that made it look like wood. So I'm just to turn around and go back and make it look like wood. Now, if you use a regular scrap wood piece of wood, you could, probably bypass this whole painting step here. But I did not. I just used, what I had on hand. And this was the easiest thing I could get to in my craft room. So once I've gotten that all done, I'm going to go ahead and secure my ring inside that little groove. And then I'm going to move on to my next little step, which is going to making little bunnies. out of these beads. So I grabbed 4 beads, 2 slightly smaller, and we're going to glue those together. And then my little tiny pom-poms from the Christmas stuff, I'm going to put one on his little bum there, and then I'm going to grab my paper wire and trim off a little piece, and I'm going to make a set of double ears and then set that inside the top hole. And I did add a dab of hot glue onto that so that it stays nice and secure in that hole on the top bead. Now, if you don't have the paper wrapped wire, you could make little ears out of regular wire. You could make little ears out of maybe a piece of scrap paper, or even out of maybe some felt, whatever you have on hand. Even fabric, that you add a little bit of stiffener to might make some cute little ears as well. And then you can kind of match your florals. Now, I have been having a little trouble with one of my batteries for my camera, and if this particular battery, if it dies while I am in the middle of filming, then I lose that whole shot. And so I lost the whole shot of finishing this up. I'm just going to run you through what I did. So I made 2 bunnies, and I glued them kind of facing each other on the front, and you can see where I have my ring that I've spray painted white inside that little groove, and I glued that in nice and tight. And then I took this pick. Now this one came from Hobby Lobby. I just loved how all the florals on it, and it was just kind of the look I was going for. I could have totally just grabbed the florals that I have already at home and, made something super cute. So again, you don't necessarily have to go out and buy anything, but I love the pickberries on here along with the simpleness of the flowers, and it was just exactly the look that I was going for. And that is all there is to this project. Honestly, the hardest part was cutting out that little groove in the center of that MDF board. If you have a quicker, easier way to do something like that, let me know in the comments below. And sadly, that is the last project. So we are going to take another look at all of our projects from today. Let me know in the comments below which one was your favorite, or ones were your favorite, and which one or ones you might like to try to recreate. And as always, if you do create anything or recreate anything, I would love for you to email those to me at HappyTuesdayDIY@gmail.com. It always warms my heart to see your guys' creations and the little spins you take on things. And I think, man, if I'd only thought of that.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really did enjoy our time together. Now, since you stuck around till the very end, here's your hint on one of next week's projects. You're going to need some spools, some little skewers from the Dollar Tree, some fabric, scraps will do, and a little bit of green felt. But until then, make it a great day, and Happy Tuesday!